Solomon warned about a decision that feels smart, but quietly ruins your future. And almost everyone watching this has already made it. There's a decision that looks smart. It feels harmless. Everyone around you approves it. But Solomon warned about this exact kind of decision, the one that quietly destroys your future. Before I explain what it is, answer this honestly, just in your head. Have you made a decision recently that felt right, but still made you slightly uneasy? If the answer is yes, stay with me, because this video might save you years of regret. Solomon wasn't warning people about obvious mistakes. He warned about traps that feel normal, reasonable, even intelligent. That's why so many people fall into them. And the most dangerous part is this. You don't feel pain when you enter the trap. You feel it much later, when it's already costing you time, money, and peace. By the end of this video, I want you to comment just one word. Trap. If this connects with a decision you're facing right now, or safe. If you're choosing wisdom over comfort. If you value wisdom that actually protects your future, hit like now. It helps this message reach people who need it. And make sure you subscribe, because this channel isn't about motivation or hype. It's about avoiding the decisions that silently destroy lives. Now let me show you the kind of decision Solomon would call a trap. Most people assume Solomon warned about obvious bad choices. The kind everyone can see coming. The reckless decision, the immoral shortcut, the clear mistake. But that's not what made him the wisest man who ever lived. Solomon understood something far more dangerous. The decisions that don't look wrong at all. In fact, they look right. They feel responsible. They're socially approved. Everyone around you nods, agrees, and sometimes even praises you for making them. And that's exactly why Solomon would call them traps. A real trap is never loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel risky when you step into it. It feels safe. It feels mature. It feels like what a reasonable person should do. That's the problem. Solomon observed that the most destructive decisions rarely come with warning signs. They come wrapped in logic, comfort, and consensus. When everyone agrees with you, you stop questioning. When something feels normal, you stop examining the consequences. Wisdom fades the moment a decision stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like, this is just how life works. This is where most people misjudge wisdom. They think wisdom is about avoiding bad actions. Solomon knew it was about recognizing dangerous patterns that society normalizes. He watched people make decisions that didn't hurt immediately. Decisions that didn't cost them overnight. Decisions that seemed small, practical, and even necessary. And yet, years later, those same people wondered why their lives felt constrained, why their options disappeared, why they felt trapped by circumstances they once chose willingly. Solomon would say the danger isn't the decision itself. It's what the decision slowly trains you to accept. A trap decision doesn't destroy you instantly. It reshapes your standards. It lowers your tolerance for discomfort. It teaches you to trade future strength for present ease. And the scariest part is that while it's happening, you feel fine. You feel smart. You feel justified. Nothing feels wrong enough to stop. This is why intelligent people fall into these traps more than anyone else. Intelligence makes you good at explaining your choices. You can always find a reason. You can always justify why now is different, why this makes sense, why you'll fix it later. Solomon noticed that wisdom doesn't argue as much as intelligence does. Wisdom pauses. Wisdom asks uncomfortable questions. Wisdom looks past what feels acceptable and asks where this path actually leads. And here's the detail most people miss. The trap isn't designed to hurt you at the beginning. It's designed to reward you first. It gives you comfort before cost, approval before consequence, relief before restriction. By the time the price shows up, the decision no longer feels optional. It feels permanent. Solomon warned that once a decision starts shaping your identity and your habits, escaping it becomes exponentially harder. So the real question isn't whether a decision feels wrong. The real question is whether it quietly removes future options while giving you short-term relief. Solomon watched people confuse peace with numbness and stability with stagnation. They thought they were choosing safety, when in reality, they were choosing limitation. And this leads directly to the next layer Solomon exposed, because once a decision rewards you early, your brain begins to defend it. You stop seeing the cost. You only feel the benefit. That's when the trap tightens, not through pain, but through comfort. And that's exactly where Solomon's warning becomes even more unsettling. Because the next danger isn't the decision itself. It's the invisible price you don't notice until it's already shaping your future. Once a decision rewards you early, something subtle happens inside your mind. You stop evaluating it. The brain is wired to protect what brings relief, comfort, or approval, especially when nothing painful follows immediately. This is why Solomon warned that the most dangerous cost of a decision is often invisible at the beginning. When a choice gives you something now, it quietly takes something later, but it does so in pieces small enough that you don't feel the loss. At first, nothing seems wrong. Life continues. Bills get paid. People approve. You move forward believing the decision worked. Solomon understood that wisdom doesn't measure decisions by immediate outcomes. It measures them by trajectory. Where's this choice taking you over time? What kind of person does it require you to become in order to sustain it? Most people never ask these questions because the reward arrives first. The mind learns to associate the decision with safety, not danger. And once that association forms, you begin defending the decision even when subtle warning signs appear. This is how invisible costs work. They don't announce themselves as losses. They show up as small adjustments. You adjust your standards. You compromise a little more next time. You delay what matters, just once more. You accept a situation you once said you never would. Solomon noticed that people rarely lose their future in a single dramatic moment. They lose it through a series of reasonable decisions that slowly narrow their lives. The early reward makes the cost harder to see because it trains you to focus on what you're gaining instead of what you're giving up. Comfort replaces growth. Stability replaces momentum. Relief replaces purpose. None of these feel dangerous on their own. In fact, they feel like progress. That's why Solomon believed that many people don't fall into traps by chasing pleasure, but by chasing relief. They want the pressure to stop. They want life to feel easier. And the trap offers exactly that, just long enough for them to settle in. Over time, the cost shows up not as pain, but as limitation. Fewer options. Less energy. Less willingness to take risks. The future starts feeling smaller, not because life attacked you, but because your decisions slowly boxed you in. Solomon observed that when people choose what feels good now, they often sacrifice the very strength they'll need later. And when later arrives, they don't recognize themselves. They wonder why their motivation is gone, why their courage feels weaker, why change feels so difficult. This is where the trap becomes self-reinforcing. The decision that once brought relief now demands consistency. You have to keep choosing it to avoid discomfort. The moment you question it, the cost becomes visible, and that realization itself feels threatening. So instead of reassessing, most people double down. They justify. They normalize. They convince themselves this is just how adulthood works. Solomon warned that this is the moment when wisdom is most needed and least welcome. What makes this even more dangerous is that from the outside, everything can look fine. No crisis. No collapse. No obvious failure. That's why these decisions spread so easily. They don't look like mistakes. They look like life. Solomon saw that people rarely wake up one day trapped. They wake up one day realizing they've been trapped for years. And this leads to a deeper problem Solomon identified, one that explains why even intelligent, capable people stay inside these traps long after the cost becomes clear. Because once a decision reshapes your identity, questioning it feels like questioning who you are. And that is where the trap stops being about the choice you made and starts becoming about the person you've become. That's the next danger Solomon warned about. Once a decision begins to shape who you are, logic stops being neutral. This is where Solomon's warning becomes especially uncomfortable. He noticed that the people most likely to stay trapped were not the careless or the uninformed, but the intelligent, disciplined, and capable. These are the people who know how to explain themselves. They know how to build arguments. They know how to make their choices sound responsible, even when those choices are quietly limiting their future. Intelligence is powerful, but Solomon saw its weakness. Intelligence looks for reasons. Wisdom looks for direction. When a decision starts costing you, intelligence goes to work protecting it. You tell yourself the timing isn't right. You say this is temporary. You remind yourself that others have it worse. Each explanation feels reasonable on its own, but together they create a shield that blocks honest evaluation. The decision no longer exists outside of you. It becomes part of your story, and questioning it feels like admitting you were wrong. This is why people rarely escape traps once identity is involved. Solomon observed that the mind resists information that threatens stability, even if that stability is harmful. Changing course requires discomfort, and the very decision that created the trap trained you to avoid discomfort at all costs. So instead of adjusting, most people adapt. They lower expectations. They redefine success. They shrink their vision just enough to make their current situation feel acceptable. Over time, this adaptation becomes invisible. You don't feel like you're choosing less. You feel like you're being realistic. Solomon warned that realism, when disconnected from wisdom, becomes a prison. It convinces you that what is familiar is what is possible. The future you once imagined starts to feel naive, impractical, or irresponsible. Not because it is, but because it threatens the structure you've built around your current decisions. What makes this especially dangerous is that from the outside, these people often appear successful. They're functional. They're productive. They're respected. And yet, internally, there's a quiet tension, a sense that something has narrowed, a feeling that certain paths are no longer open. Solomon understood that this tension is not confusion. It's awareness trying to break through rationalization. This is also why advice rarely works at this stage. When someone points out the cost, it feels like an attack. The decision is no longer just a choice. It's a defense mechanism. It protects comfort, routine, and identity. Solomon believed wisdom requires the courage to separate who you are from what you've chosen. But most people do the opposite. They fuse them together, making change feel like self-destruction rather than growth. And here's the moment Solomon feared the most. When intelligent people stop asking whether a decision is wise and start asking only whether it's manageable. Manageable becomes the new standard. As long as life doesn't fall apart, the decision stays. As long as the discomfort is tolerable, the cost is ignored. This is how traps survive for decades. Not through force, but through justification. Solomon warned that once a decision reaches this point, the trap tightens without resistance, because the mind is no longer evaluating outcomes. It's protecting identity. And as long as identity feels safe, wisdom is silenced. But Solomon also knew something hopeful. He knew that there is a specific kind of question that can break through this defense. A question so simple, yet so disruptive, that it bypasses rationalization and exposes the true direction of a decision. It doesn't argue. It doesn't accuse. It reveals. And that question is exactly where Solomon's warning reaches its peak, because it forces you to confront not just what you're doing, but where you're going. That is the next and most dangerous layer of the trap. The question Solomon believed could break through rationalization was not complicated. In fact, its simplicity is what makes it so uncomfortable. It forces you to stop defending your decision and start observing it. Solomon warned that the most dangerous trap is not a single action, but a pattern of choosing convenience over conviction. This is the decision he feared most, because it rarely feels dramatic and almost never feels wrong in the moment. Choosing convenience sounds harmless. It shows up as flexibility, compromise, or being realistic. It tells you that now is not the right time to push, to resist, or to hold your ground. It encourages you to trade long-term strength for short-term ease, one small choice at a time. Solomon observed that people rarely wake up and decide to abandon their principles. They simply delay them. And delay, repeated often enough, becomes a direction. This is the decision Solomon would call a trap, because it quietly rewrites your priorities. What once mattered deeply becomes negotiable. What once felt non-negotiable becomes situational. The danger isn't that you choose comfort once. It's that you train yourself to choose it automatically. Over time, your default response shifts. You stop asking what is right and start asking what is easier. Solomon noticed that this shift always feels justified. Life is busy. Pressure is real. Responsibilities are heavy. And convenience offers relief. But relief is not the same as peace. Relief removes tension temporarily. Peace comes from alignment. When your decisions are no longer aligned with your values, the discomfort doesn't disappear. It just changes form. It becomes restlessness, fatigue, a quiet dissatisfaction you can't fully explain. This is why Solomon warned that the cost of this decision shows up later as weakness. Not physical weakness, but inner strength. The strength to say no. The strength to endure discomfort. The strength to choose what matters over what feels good. Each time convenience wins, that strength erodes slightly. And because the erosion is gradual, most people don't notice until they need that strength, and it's no longer there. What makes this trap especially effective is that it doesn't take anything from you all at once. It asks for small concessions. A little less courage today. A little less honesty tomorrow. A little less effort the next time. None of these feel significant alone, but together, they shape a life that feels safer and smaller at the same time. Solomon believed this was the decision behind many regrets. Not the loud failures people talk about, but the quiet ones they live with. The opportunities not taken. The standards slowly lowered. The version of themselves they never became. All because convenience felt reasonable in the moment. And here's the most unsettling part of Solomon's warning. By the time you realize convenience has become your compass, the trap already feels like home. Change feels disruptive. Holding your ground feels risky. And wisdom begins to sound extreme. That's when people say things like, "This is just how things are," or "This is how life works now." Solomon would say those words are not conclusions. They are symptoms. But Solomon didn't leave people there. He offered a way to test whether a decision is a trap or a path forward. A way to see clearly, without emotion or self-deception. A test that cuts through comfort and exposes direction. And that test is what reveals whether your future is being quietly strengthened or slowly weakened. Solomon's test was never about right or wrong in the moment. It was about direction. After watching countless people justify decisions that slowly weakened their lives, he reduced wisdom to a single, revealing question. Does this decision make my future stronger or weaker? Not safer or riskier. Not easier or harder. Stronger or weaker. This question cuts through rationalization because it doesn't argue with your reasons. It simply exposes where the path leads. When you apply this test honestly, the trap becomes visible. Decisions that once felt harmless begin to reveal their cost. You notice how much energy they take, how much courage they require you to suppress, how many options they quietly remove. Solomon believed that wisdom is less about intelligence and more about honesty. The honesty to admit when a choice is offering comfort at the expense of growth. This is why he warned that the most dangerous decisions are the ones you defend the hardest. If a decision truly strengthens your future, it doesn't need constant justification. It produces clarity, not confusion. It expands your capacity instead of shrinking it. It may be uncomfortable, but it leaves you stronger, not smaller. Solomon observed that strength always demands something up front, while traps always promise relief first. Applying this test also explains why change feels so difficult once the trap is established. Choosing strength after long periods of convenience feels like loss, even when it's actually recovery. Your nervous system resists it. Your identity resists it. But Solomon would say that resistance is not proof you're wrong. It's often proof that the trap is being challenged. This is where many people hesitate. They wait for certainty. They wait to feel ready. They wait until the decision feels safe. Solomon warned that wisdom rarely feels safe at first. It feels demanding. It feels lonely. It requires you to choose future freedom over present comfort without guarantees. But he also observed that this is the only path that actually restores strength over time. The test is simple, but it's not easy. You have to ask it before the consequences are obvious, before the cost becomes painful, before the trap feels permanent. That's why Solomon believed wisdom is preventative, not reactive. It protects your future long before it needs rescue. At this point, you already know the answer for at least one decision in your life. The discomfort you feel right now is not confusion. It's clarity trying to surface. The question is whether you will listen to it or silence it with another justification. Solomon would say this moment matters more than you realize, because small directional shifts change entire outcomes. So here's what I want you to do. If this message connected with a decision you're facing, comment trap below. If you're choosing strength over comfort, comment safe. Your comment isn't for me. It's a commitment to yourself. And if you want more wisdom that actually protects your future, instead of just motivating you for a moment, like this video so it reaches the people who need it. Subscribe to this channel, because this isn't about hype or inspiration. It's about avoiding the quiet decisions that destroy lives and choosing the ones that build them. And remember this, the decisions that feel easiest today are often the ones that cost the most tomorrow. Choose wisely.